Thank you for joining our February commercial seminar. My name is Jennie Chieng. I'm a director and an investment advisor with KW Commercial, as well as a member of the education committee. As we know, the value of land is influenced by many factors, including zoning regulations, development potential, and the development costs. Today, we are fortunate to have an expert who will guide us in understanding how to price a development project and assess land values. And as a bonus, he's gonna talk about how to rebuild after the wildfire. And his name is Vincent Zhou. Vincent is a distinguished developer, builder, and entrepreneur. He founded Signature Builder 10 years ago, overseeing the production of around 150 residential units annually and entitlement of over 500 single-family and multi-family developments across various counties. Before his venture into development, Vincent worked at the Bank of America Merrill Lynch as a vice president of mortgage-backed securities in New York, managing trading portfolios worth over 500 million. He holds a bachelor degree in engineering from Cornell University with a double minor in finance and economics. Vincent has also made significant contributions to the community, serving as a board director for the San Gabriel Valley Chamber of Commerce, president of the Chinese American Construction Professionals, and a member of the Cornell Asian Alumni Association. So without further ado, let's welcome Vincent Zhou.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Vincent. Thank you for the kind introduction. That's very nice of you. Thank you very much. So today I have an hour with you guys, and I am here to talk about how to price a piece of land or a real estate related investment opportunity. To do that, there's different approaches, right? And we're going to set up today's meeting or seminar as a communication. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 topics, all related to how to price a land, how to evaluate the risk and reward of a development project. And after each session, I'm going to open up for some Q&As. If you guys have any questions regarding any of the things I just talked about, I will have little breaks in between so we can communicate, we can discuss, I can hear the questions that you have, and hopefully I can address those in a way that's productive. So without further ado, pricing a land, right? So let's define, first of all, let's define the stage of land. We have a piece of land, let's say in Riverside, Palmdale, downtown LA. What stage is the land in? That's the first question. So the first stage is the raw land. You have a piece of land, there's no infrastructure on it, there's no building on it, there's no entitlement on it. That's called a raw land. Any kind of raw land in any city or county is going to have a zoning attached to it, whether it's zoned agricultural, right? You can plant some crops on it, or it's zoned residential. That means you can build some residential units, or zoned commercial manufacturing. You can build a warehouse, you can build some storage facilities. That's the zoning on the raw land. On top of the zoning, there is something called the general plan. The city or the county has a plan to what the future development of that piece of the land is. Sometimes, and most of the time, it's the same thing as the zoning. But a lot of the time, the city plan to change that zoning to a different type of zoning, either increase the density, changing it from a residential to a commercial, or changing it from a commercial to a residential unit. That's done by the city's general plan. And the city usually go through a general plan update every 10 years. So that is the first stage of the land, right? In this very, very raw form. is called a raw land. Now, to do anything with that piece of land, what you need is entitlement. Entitlement meaning you design something on the land, you talk to the city look at it, approves your intended use for the land, and give you an entitlement. So that is the second stage of the land, is entitled land. And then the third stage, which is very close to the final form, is called finished lot or engineered land. Okay, so what it is you entitled it, you know what you're going to build. You bring in a general contractor, you complete the infrastructure of that piece of land, and that will allow you to build houses on it. Okay, so a piece of entitled land with constructed infrastructure, grading, sewage, water, right? That kind of stuff is called a finished lot. So for the easy of definition today, we're going to talk about 3 stages of land. One is the raw land, nothing on it. 2 is the entitled land, which sometimes people call that paper lot. Okay, it's on paper. The city allows you to do what you want to do. And then the third one is with the infrastructure completed, finished lots. So if you have a client or if you are looking at a piece of land, regardless of the size, the location, and you're asking yourself, how much is that land worth? Okay, how do I figure out the price of land? If this is a house, right, let's do a very similar analysis. If this is a house in San Gabriel Valley, right, in Irvine, how much is the house worth? The easiest way, the most direct way to figure out the market value of that property is through a sales comp comparison, right? So you look at the house or you look at the land that's nearby and how much they sell for, and you adjust it based on what your land is to come up with a price. That should be very easy for all of you guys by profession. You guys are brokers, you guys are salesperson, realtors. That's what you guys do all day, right? You guys are the best at it. And just quickly go over that. What are the deciding factors that affects the price of a land? Number one, location, location, location. Where is the land, right? So is that in Irvine? Is that in Riverside? Is it in Palmdale? So that affects it. The size of the land, how big is the land? Of course, most of the time the lands are priced per acre. So the size definitely matters. The density and zoning, this goes to the second stage of land I was talking about. What is the entitlement or what is the intrinsic allowed usage of the land? Is the land allowed to build 1 single family per acre, or is it allowed to build 4 single family per acre? Obviously, the price will differ exponentially because of that, right? And what is the third one? The fourth one is what stage is the land in? Is that a raw land with no entitlement? Is that an entitled piece of land, or is it a finished lot? And you have all that, you adjust the price based on adverse factors. Does the land have any environmental issue? Does the land have any traffic issue? When in the future, when you develop it, is there soil report? Is there phase 1 report? So we'll talk about all that things that affects the value of the land a little bit more in details. So that will be method number 1. I'm going to take a short pause here. Do anybody have any questions with the 2 topics I just quickly covered, right? We're talking about the stage of the land. What kind of stage is the land in? And the first method of evaluating what the land is worth by compared to what else is on the market and what has been sold. Those will be the easiest topic for today. Any questions so far? Okay, how do you price a land that is under an acre? Under an acre. Okay, so that is the question. Now, to answer that question, we first need to know what can the land be used for, right? Most of the time, what do we see? Land under an acre, if it is in an urban area, for example, if it is in Alhambra, right? If it's in downtown LA, the likelihood it is probably a residential zone, meaning the allowed usage for that is to build some kind of residential structure on it. What you do is goes to my method number 2. This is a very good transition into my next topic. You look at the comps of the land, right? But sometimes there are no comps. This is not a house. This is not an apartment where there's a lot of transactions. The last time and land, let's say an acre of land in Irvine that got sold might be 5 years ago, right? And people paid a very different price. So the method number 2, what I call is derive from final product. This one is what the big builders and most of the developers use to price any kind of land or any kind of commercial real estate. So essentially, in summary, what that means is you find the product that makes the most sense, that maximize the final price of the land. For example, if you have a 1 acre land in downtown LA, what is the most likely product that you can build that makes the most money for the developers? Very likely a building, right? Thank you. So a very highly regarded, nicely designed modern building that allows residentials on top floors, you can sell the penthouse, you have maybe some commercials on the bottom, right? So that will be the first thing you do when you have a piece of land. You have no clue what to do with it. You figure out the product, you figure out the final product. Now, let's do another example. If you have 20 acres of land in Riverside, what is the most likely project or most likely product that you would like to put on it? Anybody? Tract home, that's a good one. 20 acres tract home. Does anybody know the average density of a traditional tract home? It's usually about 4 to 5 units per acre. Okay, so every acre, about 43,000 square foot. You usually build a 4 or 5 tract home, single families. That would usually give you about 2,000 to 2,500 square foot for the interior areas, right? So 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom. You see a lot of those products done by Lennar, KB Homes, D.R. Horton, right? And you will get about 7,000 to 8,000 square foot of total lot size. So every acre, you build 4 to 5 tract home residential homes. So like you said, if I have about 20 acres in Riverside, the most likely product that I put on that land is a tract home development. Now, that makes sense a lot, let's say 5-10 years ago. I would argue the best product, if you have 20 acres of land in Riverside, especially if you're closer to downtown Riverside, Moreno Valley, the best product nowadays to put on that piece of land is probably something with a little bit higher density. Okay, so you're looking at townhomes, you're looking at clustered style homes, which gives you between 10 to 20 units per acre. Okay, so you from 5 per acre to 10, that's you doubling the density, to 20 acres, so that's 4 times the density. For a very good example, we built a community called Lagos Los Serranos in Chino Hills, next to the golf course. And that is designed to have about 20 units per acre. Now, some of you guys might ask, so why 5 years, 10 years ago, it made sense to build 4 single-family homes on that, and now you want to do higher density? The answer is the same thing as if you look at downtown LA, the density of the population is higher, right? The infrastructure cost for a piece of land usually stays very similar because that depends on the size of the land. So the more unit you can get out of a development usually will net you more profit. Okay, so let's say you're making $100,000 per house. If you do 4 homes, you're making $400,000. But if you're making $50,000 per house and you're building 20 of them, all of a sudden you're making a lot more money, right? So that kind of circles back to the first topic. The first thing you want to do when you price a piece of land is to find out what is the final product that you want to build on it. And for the ease of today, let's just assume it's residential. It's the same thing for commercial, right? If you want to do a warehouse, you want to find out what size of warehouse you want to do, right? How many loading docks and what's the height? What is the general function of it? We have done medical developments. We have done senior care centers. The process is the same. You first define the final product. And after you define the final product, you define the market value of the final product. So let's say you're building 100 single families, and you say each of the single family will sell for $500,000. All of a sudden, you have $50 million worth of homes, right? So that is your starting point. From that, the next one is easy. You deduct the design costs. How much is the architecture going to charge you to design the product you want? How much is a civil engineer going to cost you? There's a list of third-party consultants that you will need to do any kind of development. I'm going to quickly count them. You need an architect to design your buildings, right? What it looks like. You need a civil engineer to design your infrastructure, which is your grading, your on-site sewage, off-site sewage, where the wastewater drains to, where your water come from, where your power and everything else come from. What does the street looks like? So that's done by your civil engineer. You need a soil engineer to tell you what the condition of the soil is. And likely you need a landscape engineer to design your landscape. So those are the main consultants that you'll be needing to design it. So you deduct the price of design from your total sales price. And what else do you deduct? You deduct your development cost and also your permit fees, what the city charges. Just to give kind of like a reference. Usually, if you are building a single family nowadays, any city, we're talking about 2,000 square foot on average single family. The city will likely charge you somewhere between $50,000 to $65,000 for the increase in traffic, police department, school fees, water capacity, and all that. Okay, so every time you build a new residential homes, the city charge what they call a development impact fees. So that's about $50,000 to $60,000. It's a good number to know in case somebody asks. So you deduct the development fees, and then you deduct the construction cost. That you can get from a general contractor or somebody knowledgeable in the field. Once you deduct the construction cost, you deduct the sales cost to sell that project, deduct your financing and insurance, and all of a sudden, whatever money left is the highest price you can pay for a piece of land. So let's do a very quick kind of math together, right? So if you have a piece of paper, if you have a pen, let's all kind of do it together. So let's say I have 1 acre of land in Riverside. How much can I sell the land for? How much is the land worth? Well, for the ease of practice here today, let's say I can build 5 single families on that piece of land. Does anybody want to give me a price how much a house will sell for in that area? Riverside, let's say close to UC Riverside. Trying to give me a whole number. New homes, about 2,000 square foot. Let's say we're building a 2,000 square foot homes, right? Close to Moreno Valley. 800, somebody's very confident in the market. I'll price that a little bit lower. Yeah, let's say 700,000, right? 700, between 600 to 700,000. But I'm pick a whole number. Let's say $700,000. Now that piece of land, 1 acre. I'm just writing down parameter. I'm doing this as you guys are together, right? So 1 acre. I'm building 5 single families. And I'm not putting it on the screen so we can all do our own calculation and then we can compare our answers later, okay? So each of the homes sells for $700,000. So what is the total revenue of this, right? $700,000 times 5, $3.5 million, right? Okay, now the first thing I said is what are we going to deduct? We're going to deduct the design cost. How much does it take to design the 5 homes? Let's say your archi charges you. No, let's say the archi charges $50,000, 50K, right? For all of it. Let's say we're building the same house 5 times, right? That's what you want to do when you do tract homes. You don't want to design every single house by itself, right? So archi, 50K, right? Your civil engineers and all the other ones, 100K, $100,000. Right. Civil engineer soil. No, we're just doing a quick exercise. I'm not trying to be exact here, right? So that's $150,000 here that you need to deduct, right? So 3.5, right? So minus 100. Yeah, let's assume that for now. So you minus 150,000. You got 300 and 3.35 million, right? $3.35 million left. Now, how much does the city charges for the fees? We said about, let's just say $50,000 per unit. That times 5, you got $250,000, right? So minus another $250,000, $3.1 million left, right? Now, what's the next one that we subtract? Your construction cost. Assuming your construction cost right now is at $200 per square foot. So you're building 2,000 square foot per house, right? So each house takes $400,000 to build. 400,000 times 7, 2.8 million. Oh, I'm okay. So we're building 5 houses. Sorry, I thought it was 5 houses. That's $2 million, right? Minus 2 million construction cost. So you have $1.1 million left. Now, $1.1 million left, you have to sell those 5 houses, right? So commission, you got to pay commission. That's absolutely important. One of the most important thing here we're talking about. So how much commission do you guys want to charge on that one? Let's be generous to ourselves. Let's do a 5% commission. Okay, so 2 million times 5. Oh no, you're selling the houses for how many? 3.5 million, right? 3.5 times 5%. 175,000. Let's give a little bit more. $200,000 commission. So $1.1 million minus $200,000, you have 1.9. You have $900,000. $900,000. So based on that calculation, well, let's assume you have to minus the development cost, which is your financing, your insurance. Take another $100,000 off, right, to pay for your insurance and financing costs. So your land is worth $800,000 right now. That will be the price of the land. Okay. Now, are there other factors that goes into it? We kind of circle back to the first topic that we talked about. Is the land a raw land? Does it have entitlement? What we assumed was the land was raw, right? You paid for the architecture, you pay for the civil engineer, right? Which is the $150,000 to bring the land into the entitled stage. Okay. Now, there's time that's associated with it, especially in California. To take any kind of raw land into an entitled piece of land, you're probably looking at between a year and a half to 2.5 years. So the city will give you that entitlement. So if you have to buy the land for $800,000 and you have to hold it for 2 years, you got to factor in your property tax, right? Your carry cost for that money, your opportunity cost for that money, especially nowadays that the interest is around 5%. So if I have to offer on a piece of land that I know I can pay $800,000, but I need to spend 2 years on developing it, I would discount that money back to say, well, let's say I pay $500,000, right? Give myself $300,000 wiggle rooms to pay for the carry cost of holding that land for 2 years. So in general, I'm not trying to be super specific today in exactly how to price a land to the penny. I just wanted to give a very kind of general idea of how to price it. So you design the final product, right? You subtract the construction cost, subtract the design cost, subtract the entitlement cost. And actually, what we forgot to subtract is the profit for the developers, right? You also have to subtract the profit, how much the developer wants to make. You subtract all of that, what you're left with will be the value of the land. Now, I have a question. Can the value of the land be negative? Okay, under what circumstances will the value of the land be negative? That's correct. So, under what circumstances will the land value be negative? When the development cost is too high. Okay, for a very good example, we look at a piece of land very close to IKEA. There is a cemetery, I think it's called the Rose Hill or the Horse Lawn there. There is a gated community right below that. I forgot the name. We looked at the land about 3 years ago. It was selling for a good 10 acres of land on a very nice hillside, beautiful piece of land. They were selling it for really, really cheap. It was about $2.5 million for 10 acres, and we can theoretically build, I think it was like close to 40 single families in a gated community in Covina, which is very rare. And each house that we could have built 3,000-4,000 square foot, and inside the community, the houses were selling over $1 million, $1.5 million. We look at it, we were in escrow. Now the challenge with that land is the infrastructure cost is tremendous. It's on the hillside. There's some wildlife protected species. The CEQA, which is stands for environmental studies, require a lot of mitigation to even start building that land. Essentially, we have to level a whole hill, work with the neighbors, make sure all the animals and the fish and whatnot are protected, the storm drains and all the water flows are correct so it doesn't flood the existing neighbors. And the development cost came out to be close to $20 million. I mean, the land is really cheap. You can 10 acres in Covina. I mean, for $2.5 million. If you didn't know any better, you'd be, yeah, that sounds pretty cheap, right? I can build one house, I can build two houses. But to do anything on that piece of land, you have to spend $20 million just to get it functional. Which, if we do the calculation on how much each house can sell for, minus the development cost, minus the sales cost and everything, the land is worth like negative $5 million. So that's a lot of time the land will be worth a negative value. Now, will that number change? And how will that number change? And what affects that, right? What can make a negatively priced land positive? That goes to the entitlement. Same piece of land in Covina. If I'm allowed to build a skyscraper. Let's say I can do 200 unit residentials, like, one of those big tall built towers. That might pencil out, right? All of a sudden, that $20 million, I can average that out by 200 unit instead of 40 unit. Or if the city allows me to increase my density, I can absorb the development cost with more unit. And all of a sudden, that land might be worth something. Okay, so now a lot of people say, hey, I had a client who bought a warehouse 20, 30 years ago in City of Industry or West Covina or Roland Heights, right? Chino Hills. He only paid like $1 million, $2 million. Now that land is worth $10 million. How did that happen? Because the potential usage for that land has changed, allows for a different product to be built on it, to be developed on it. And all of a sudden, if you use the best product that's potentially can be done on that project and calculate what the land price is minus construction cost, you arrive with a much higher price. Okay, so that will be method number 2 is you decide a final product and then you do it backward. You derive the land price based on the best potential product you can put on that land. Okay, so that will be number 2. So let's kind of review what we talked about here so far. Different stage of land, right? You have raw land, you have entitled land, and you have finished lots. Different stages of construction. And the first method, very straightforward. You take a piece of land that's been sold lately. If there are a lot of comps in the area, right? You adjust for size, you adjust for density, you adjust for entitlement and any kind of uniqueness to your piece of land, right? And then you arrive to a market value that's based on what's been sold around the area. And if that is not available, and most of the time, developers or clients do not want to rely on that method, because if the other piece of land is sold within the family or not at arm's length, right, then your data, your reference point is off. So the best way to do it, like we talked about, is look at the final product, best fit for that land, subtract the development cost, subtract the construction cost, subtract all your expenses, account for the time that it takes to develop it to that product, and then arrive at the highest price for that land. Okay, I want to stress that whatever price that you arrived at is the highest price you want to pay. If you pay higher than that, you lose money or you have to compensate from your other expenses. You have to lower your other costs to adjust, to account for that differences. Okay, so when we did the exercise, I had no idea how much that land is going to come out to be. So $800,000 for an acre of land in Riverside. Actually, that sounds a little bit high, to be honest. Right now, just for your references, we are looking at any kind of raw land that can only be done for 4 to 5 track home type of things. You're probably looking at a $50,000 per acre if the price is higher, if the size is about 10 to 20 acres. Okay, now those lands are harder and harder to find. Okay, and most of the big developers that's developing the suburban areas has already moved their battlefield, say, east of 215 freeway, right? So there's a lot in high deserts. People are going to Moreno Valley, Lake Elsinore, Paris. So if you see KB Home, DR Horton, they're focusing a lot on that. Ontario, the price has gone up tremendously. So we have a couple of developers there. Used to be selling things, around $500,000, 600,000. Now even the townhomes are starting around $700,000, $800,000. So a lot of things people price out of that. Okay, so let me take a quick pause here. Any questions so far? So we talked about the stage of land, 2 method of how to price the land. Any questions? Yes. Let me repeat the question for those are who are online. The comments is we gotta account for utility cost, which I usually call that infrastructure or horizontal cost. And he suggested that put in a 15% contingency into the building cost. What I always tell people when it comes to real estate development, especially construction, there's two things that are almost guaranteed. It's going to take longer than you think, and it's going to be a little bit more expensive than you think. Most of the project, unless your budget is very, very generous. So that, I do seminars, and that's a whole different seminar on performance and the project budget. It can take hours and go into each details. Give me one second. So, but essentially, what he's absolutely right. So when we do the budget, you always wanted to put a contingency for monetary contingency and time contingency. Okay, so for the ease of exercise that we did earlier, we only counted $200 per construction cost, which right now that usually accounts for the vertical portion only, right? So I would add the infrastructure cost, horizontal cost, and the GC fees more in detail. So good comments. Yes. Okay. So the question is, what is my experience in evaluating a raw land in relationship to easement, right? So let me define what easement is. An easement is the legal right to have somebody else use your land for something. Okay, so for example, if you have a piece of land that has two houses and one house is tucked behind the first house. To get to the second house, you need to kind of go through the driveway of the first house. And that driveway will give an easement to the second house. Right? And that will be on the deed and recorded on the first house. So the second house has the right to go through the driveway so you can have access to its property. So that's called easement. And easement come in various forms. You have easement that are by the city, where the city has the right to come onto your property to serve an existing sewage water line. There's Addison easement. Addison has the right to come on your property to serve their power grid, right? Like you said, there's easement by Caltrans, by the railroad. If there is a railroad behind your property, likelihood anywhere outside of the railroad, 20 foot outside the railroad, city or the railroad company has an easement. They can drive a truck on it to service the track, and you are not allowed to build any structure or infrastructure within that space. We have done a project in Harupa Valley where there was a railroad. How much contingency and how do you price the land because of that easement? I would say the most affected issue with that easement is time. Okay, for now, because the time it takes to work with Caltrans and to work with the railroad company is very, very long. They're very slow and responsive, and they are not prone to changes because there's really nothing you can offer them that benefit them. They have an easement. They don't have to give you anything, right? Most of the time, we're asking to see if we can decrease that buffer between the space, or if we're allowed to build something right outside of it. They don't have to say yes. They don't have to do anything. Matter of fact, so it will take a long time to do anything. Even a lot of time, what you see, what are you trying to propose is within the right defined by the city's design parameters. You need their permission to proceed with the entitlement. There's no reason why they wouldn't allow you to do something like that. But to get that permission takes a lot of time, and sometimes take civil engineers, architecturals, they will charge you accordingly because the time they spend as well. All right. So that's a risk that I would say that would be one of the hardest risks to price onto your land. And sometimes that can affect the land price tremendously. I don't know. I don't have a specific like a percentage answer for you, but I hope that's very correct. And you sometimes you do see a land sitting there for a long time and nobody wants to touch it. And that is most likely the reason for it. That's correct. So the comment is there sometimes you have a piece of land, right? There's development building around that land already. And you say, hey, look, if I buy this one, I do similar things, it should be easy, right? Because there's predecessors. Uh, a lot of the time, especially in California, uh, that can be very misleading and that can be dangerous. And the reason is you can be grandfathered in for certain entitlement. Let's say your land is zoned for R2, or you can build 4 house per acre, you can build 20 per acre, you can build a warehouse on it. However, when we first started the session, you remember something I call the general plan amendment, right? The general plan. The city might have a different idea of how they want that whole area to be developed. So the current zone might not be in the same vision that the city has. So if you're trying to build something based on the current zone, but then the city wants to do a nice walkable downtown area, right? Then they are going to give you a lot of issues entitling that land. And that issue can come from environmental issues, come from neighborhood outreach, right? There's a lot of oppositions from the neighbors or from the locals. Let's say if we're in Texas, it's very dry. We done project in Texas. That usually say you're allowed to do this. People object. Well, I'm sorry, that kind of sucks for them. You're allowed to do it. Go ahead and do it. In California, a lot of the politicians and the planners, they will have pressure from the local community and they will either take your project very slowly or they are afraid to approve your project, which will drag the project in a very long time. So a couple of weeks ago, we were in a seminar talking to the owner of KB Homes. And he's saying, California does not have a housing crisis. California has a housing policy crisis. Which we all laugh, but then the underlying message is absolutely correct. We can build houses quick. My average construction time, let's say to build a residential homes in a tract format, I can build a house within 4 months from the beginning of your concrete slab to give you the key and you move in. So the construction housing is not a crisis. The housing crisis came from policy on what is regulated and how long it takes to get a tract approved. The slowest portion of the development construction is not the construction, it's the development. Like I said, right? Take a year, take 2 years to just know exactly what you can build. Once you know that and have all the permit, building is the easy part. Okay, so that kind of leads nicely into my next topic. Okay, so what are the risks in development? So if you have a client or if you're thinking about doing something yourself, should I go into development, right? There's a piece of land I see on Zillow that's, I think it's reasonably priced. You go through the exercise on my first exercise. There's land that's been selling for $1 million. This land is only $750,000. I'm not overpaying for it. I can build 7, 8 homes on it. I did my homework on construction costs, my development costs. And he said, I think I'm going to make $500,000 doing this project, right? Then the next question you want to ask you is, what are the risks in development? So why aren't there a lot of developer? Everybody's a developer. Why aren't people buying land and building things? In the older time, there's quite a lot of people who buy a piece of land, they build their dream homes, on it. You don't see that quite often anymore. And this is kind of like a broader topic. And the reason, does anybody know why people don't build their own homes and buy a piece of land and build their own homes? That we don't see a lot of those anymore. Cost, the development cost, and how much hoops you have to jump over to get to that point, right? So the reason why there's so many tract homes going, Lennar, D.R. Horton, Shea Homes, sorry, Frontier, party homes, just to name a few, is when they buy a big piece of land, they pay the design fee one time and they build the same homes over and over and over, right? They have one on-site super that builds 20 homes at the same time. They have a subcontractor that comes in that do the framing or drywall for 20 homes, right? The efficiency of building a tract home is much, much higher than building a custom home. So you see custom homes that's been done in the coastal area, Malibu, Hollywood, that sells for $4 or $5 million because those priced homes are priced at a very high premium. There's enough profitability to do it. But for entry-level homes, there isn't. You have to be at a super high efficiency in order for that home not to be priced through the roof to be affordable. So kind of off the topic, that's why you don't see a lot of people buying one piece of land and building their own dream homes, unless they're very wealthy and they know exactly what they want. Yes, I have a question. Okay, so the question is, she's seen people buy a lot with a small house. You either tear it down, rebuild it, or you add an ADU on it. Is it worth it? Uh, what we call that is called flips, right? So essentially, you buy a house that is under the value of the market, hopefully, right? You have a house that's either very old or just not efficient, right? Let's say if you have a 1,000 square foot house in San Marino that's sitting on an acre of land, that's not the best. You can build something that's much better, right? And they sell for a lot of money. Is it worth it to do it? That depends. We have friends who specialize in flips like that. So, for example, he would buy houses around $1 million around the LA area. He would spend 300,000 to 500,000 renovating it, sometimes rebuilding portions of it, adding an ADU to it, and he would sell that for about 2 millions and make a little nice profit in it. Depends on the area. And in general, the price per square foot, the higher the price per square foot of the real estate that's selling in the area, the more sense it makes to do flips or to do renovation. Okay, so if you see, the word kind of goes to gentrification. If you see an area that's upcoming, there's a lot of very expensive houses in that area. But at the same time, there's a lot of older houses that are around that are just not in good condition. Sometimes it makes sense to buy those houses, spend some money renovating it and selling it. But let me do a quick example. If you go to San Jacinto, a lot of people don't know where that is. So that'll be to the east of Riverside, right? There are some, older houses, but any kind of older houses you can buy, especially nowadays when the entry barrier to owning real estate is so high. You won't be able to get anything cheaper than $400,000, even like the worst condition homes, right? You won't get it for $400,000. If you have to tear that down, remember the number we use is like $200 per square foot, right? So building a 2,000 square foot house, that's another 400,000 plus the house that you just bought, right? That's $800,000 plus your cost and everything. So eventually you have to build something that sells for $1 million. But that price is not valid in that area. So in that area, it wouldn't make sense. But you take the same concept, you take it to Irvine, you take it to Hollywood, you take to even Ontario or Arcadia, that would make sense because if you can get the land or the existing house cheap enough, the construction cost is not a majority of your new product. Okay, I want to elaborate that on a little bit. So if you have no references, let's say a broker, a developer comes in, how much can I pay for my raw land? The rule of thumb is you don't want to pay for more than, say, 20 to 25% of your sales price. If you can sell the house for $1 million, if I'm not doing any of my calculation, I usually don't want to pay more than 200 to a $250,000 to buy the land. Okay. So if you go to an area that's less developed, that number decreases. If you go to the area that's more developed, you go to Irvine, you go to Hollywood, people can afford to pay 30, 50% of the sales price for the land because the land is so unique and so rare. Okay, so very funny thing. Altadena, Pasadena area, the first house after the fire was sold, I think 2 days ago. Does anybody know how much it was sold for? The piece of land that the burnt down house was sold 2 days ago. 555,000. Right. The asking price was $450,000, and there were numerous bidders on it. And that's pretty much as is. So it will be the land plus whatever whatever debris on it. Yeah. So $550,000. This is I think that one is in Pasadena. I think that I could be wrong on that. So let's do a quick calculation. If somebody buy that piece of land for $550,000, and let's say you do 25%, how much do they have to sell that house for? They have to sell that house right about $2 million, whatever house they built, right? Does that make sense? Kind of. We don't know. We don't know what his plans. I think the house that was burned down was somewhere around like 3,000 square foot, right? So 3,000 square foot house in Pasadena, yeah, you probably can sell that about 2 million, probably even higher if it's brand new. So that quick calculation, what I just did, right? Use 20 to 25% of the sales price for the land price. Just very quick calculation. That makes sense. Questions? I have one question over there. So this, yeah. So the question is, how do you evaluate the land that went through a natural hazardous or kind of fire, right? What do you need to subtract from the price, or what do you need to add to the price if there are any? That was actually on my last up, but I'm going to bring that up a little bit since that is more relevant today, right? There's the fire that just happened. There's thousands of houses that got burned down. There are challenges with rebuilding after fire. One of them is most of those lands are owned by by individuals. So you cannot buy a huge piece of land and do a tract home or a master plan community because you have to buy the land from 100, 200 people, right? And like what we talked about earlier, if you don't do it with a master plan or the size of it, you don't have the efficiency. So you are forced to build custom homes that needs to be sold at a much higher price, which kind of goes back to why the person sold his burned down house land for $550,000 because he's expecting, or whoever buys it is expecting to build a new luxury homes and sell it more than $2 million. Now, what are the risks of the land that has gone through that fire? To understand that the fire does not itself damage the land. What it does is it might create environmental issues. That depends on the house that was on it before. Asbestos, if the house was very old, right? So you burn it, all that debris, all that poison get watered down by the rain into the ground. And if we're talking about a very established, like older neighborhood, like Altadena, there are a lot of houses that were built so long times ago. The building and development standard were not up to date. So those houses, they didn't check for what's under the ground, right? They didn't check for a phase 1 report, whether there's pollution under the house already, what kind of soil condition around the area. So there are houses that are built on polluted soils. So if you just buy a piece of land and you don't know what's under it, even if there was a house before, that doesn't mean the city is going to say, well, just build a new house, right? Most of the time, if you want to do a development, you wanted to do a couple reports. Number one is called a phase 1 report. Phase 1, PHASE, phase 1. What that does is they look into the history of the land that you're on, whether that's being used as a factory, as a farm, as a gas station. If that piece of land has never been used for anything that has a potential hazardous waste, then that will give you a positive report. Say you're clear, there's nothing to worry about. But sometimes you've seen a piece of land that used to be a gas station, used to be a car repair shop where they have oils that seeks into the ground, right? And that actually will have a parameter that they will do the report for I forgot what exactly the distance is, right, for the surrounding area to see if there's anything under the ground that might have seeked through under your land. So that will be phase one. That will tell you the history of the land, whether there's anything that can be of concern. If there's something that of the concern, then you will do a phase two, which they will take sample of the dirt and analyze it in a lab. And then if that has huge issues, they will do a phase three, which become very expensive. And that will come with a mitigation on how to deal with it. And a lot of time you have to dig all the dirt, ship it to out of state. And to dump it and import dirt to refill it. So anything that goes to phase three is probably don't touch. So that's one challenge. And then the other report, what you want to do is called a soil report. Soil report will tell you the dirt on your land, whether it's expansive, right? So does it have a factor of or likelihood to expand? Is it loose or is it very solid? And a lot of the time, if you have expansive soils, you have to beef up your foundation design, whether do a post-tension foundation, increase the size of your footings, and increase the slab depth. So those are things that will kind of add the cost, right? And if we go back to the second method, your final product minus the cost now, which is higher because the report that you have got will decrease the price of your land. So to answer your question, look at the environmental reports and see if there are anything that can increase the cost of your construction, the time of your entitlement, and factor that accordingly to discount the price of the land. Okay, so the question is, so there's experience where the broker is saying, don't buy a burned down house because the soil might be damaged or there might be issues with it. In generally, I would not totally agree with that statement. I think the fire happens to the structure as long as the structure and the debris can be cleared. If you dig down to the dirt, even if you dig down 6 inches, you're gonna find the dirt has absolutely no effects on the dirt unless it's from the house, the debris that seeks through that dirt, right? So by itself, the dirt is dirt. So I would say, same thing to the last question. Look at when the house was built, if there could be any environmental issue from the material that was of the house that affects the current condition of the very loose is not something of concern most of the time when it comes to construction, because when you build a new house, you have to do compaction anyway. Usually we go 5 foot down from the surface and we build it back up. So if the top layer of your dirt has been affected by the fire, when they do the demo, when they kind of scoop up all the debris, you can you can remove that top layer at a very minimal cost. There's a lot of dump site that will take dirt for free, right? Because it's not a waste, it's not a commercial waste, it's not a household waste. And then if needed, you can import some other dirt with a better condition, and then you do the compaction. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to what other risks. So we're off the topic for a little bit, but I think those are all very good discussions, and definitely things that people care about. Oh, I just want to bring it back. So since we're already on the topic of the fire recoveries, what is the timing to have this recovery? When do you guys think that Altadena can be rebuilt, or the Palisades? Anybody wants to take a quick? I don't know the answer, just to say, I have my opinion, but I hear 2 years, I hear 5 years, 4 years, 4 or 5 years. Let me give you a very interesting fact. That one of my best friend's house got burned. He lived in Altadena. Uh, he's a doctor, so funny story. I called him the night I saw the fire from my house on the mountain. I said, "Hey, Dr. Barley, is your house okay?" And he's working at a hospital. He said, "Oh, what's going on?" He said, I don't know what's going on." I was like, "Well, your whole neighborhood is probably on fire. I see the fire there." He said, "Oh my God, let me go home." So he went home. He drove home, not too far. And he called me from the house. He said, "Oh yeah, my house is okay. I think the fire is going the other way. But thank you for letting me know. I'm gonna take a couple of my documents and my patient records, and uh, and that's it." So then I haven't heard him. And then the next day, he called. He said, "Hey Vince," I said, "What's up?" And he said, "Yeah, my house is gone." I'm like, wait a minute. You called me from your house yesterday telling me your house is okay." He said, "Yes." And I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, I thought it was okay. So I went back to work." And my neighbor called me this morning. He said, "Our house is gone." And that is so I mean, lost everything. That was a beautiful house. My friend grew up in that house, and he's Dr. Barley Jr. now, and his dad is the Dr. Barley that I talked to. It was like a 8,000 square foot house in Altadena. So the insurance company gave him $470,000 for rent specifically before his house can be rebuilt. $470,000 for rent. So for rent, for him to go rent a house before he can rebuild his own house. All right. So I'm like, that's a huge number. So if for how exactly, so the question is how long? They didn't give you specific time because the insurance company doesn't know how long it's going to take you to rebuild your house, right? So he give you a set amount of time. But if you factor in, let's say he spent $10,000 on rent per month, which $10,000 probably can get you a 5 bedroom, nice, pretty nice house, about 5,000, 6,000 square foot, right? That's 47, what is it? 470, yeah, $470,000. So that's 47 month, 47 month. Yeah, 3 to 4. That's if you spend $10,000 on rent per month. So the average time that we're expecting for this kind of recoveries, you're probably looking at 5 to 10 years, to be honest. Yeah, depends on what the county and the city's policy on processing the permit and how the insurance company step up to help to pay for the cost. It is so the question is the $470,000 addition to the recovery for the construction of building the house and covered by the insurance. That's correct. So most of the time they have a line item. They allocate revenues to each item. So that was allocated to the rent. And then on top of that, there is, I forgot, it was like a $2-3 million or whatever it is for the construction and design of the new house. Yes, we got a question. Mm-hmm. So the comment is he also has a friend who lost a house in the Altadena fire, and the insurance company is giving him or her $15,000 a month, but that might have to cover for his mortgage payments and a lot of other expenses as well. So yeah, it's very unfortunate for a lot of the people that have lost it. I kind of wanted to find a percentage of people who have insurance compared to those who don't have insurance in that area. I haven't really find that number yet. And it doesn't really help me make more money or do anything, but it's just very interesting to see. I have a feeling that a lot of the houses might not be sufficiently covered by the fire insurance because if you have a mortgage, usually the lender requires certain coverage, right? Force you to buy the insurance. But in an older neighborhood like Altadena, where there's a lot of houses that does not have mortgage on it, and people do not think that their house is going to burn down. They're far from the hills. They're far from the high fire hazard, and they can go a mile north, and there's still people there. I mean, and then they think the entire neighborhood been burned down. Yeah, the entire city out pretty much has been burned down. That's apocalyptic uh, type of event. So they don't have insurance. So hopefully there's some kind of program that will help to for those people. Yes, I have another question. All right. So the comment is on the residential side, although it might be a long process and complicated, but might be easier because the type of the product is very monogenic, right? But on the commercial side, there's all kinds of different commercials. I would actually argue that the commercial side, I feel less sorry about to be, in certain extent, um, because usually when you look at a new city or when you want to go into area and you want to develop an area, the residential will lead the commercial in progress. So you want to build enough residential there so it has enough demand, and then the commercial will follow, right? So if the commercial pad is there, a lot of the bigger companies or commercial different companies, once they see the demand, the residential is back, they will buy the commercial side or rebuild the commercial side with a much more corporate approach, right? And that usually is more professional and more knowledgeable, and they have deeper pockets and they have better financings than the mom and pop individual owners who wants to build their houses. So I mean, it's very tragic for everybody who have lost their things. But let's say if Target has lost their buildings or AutoZone has lost their service departments, I think that's a much smaller effect on the entire operation than somebody lost a house they've been living there for years. Yes, I have a question in the back. That's correct. So the comment is, I mentioned sometimes the insurance company does not have sufficient coverage for the entire amount of the rebuild, right? And a lot of the time there's different programs, different grant, and different salaries facilities that will add to that additional cost or help with it. I personally do not have experience of dealing with the insurance. We had seminars and we had discussions on what might happen. Our feeling is when such a massive area uh, got damaged, the design cost will absolutely increase. There's only certain number of design firms locally, right? And they either need to beef up their staff or it's not like they're trying to take advantage and price gouging. It's just they need to hire more people to take all that demand, right? So the design cost is going to go higher. Construction cost absolutely is going to go higher. There's only certain amount of subcontractors and tradesmen in that area. I can get people from Riverside to come here and do work, but they have to drive that far, pay for gas and everything. So in general, you're going to see a construction price that goes up. If this is a single isolated event, say one neighborhood, one house burned down, their previous estimate on that reconstruction cost might be accurate if it was updated recently. But I almost guarantee you all of the construction cost estimate for that entire area is going to be under what the actual price is going to be. So I think there's that's one of the major issue is how do you build the houses that you had for the amount of money that's not there, And do you choose to build a smaller houses and not maximize the value on that lot? Or do you somehow find additional money to build a house? So let that sink in. So my friend's house, right, for example, he is sitting on about 2 acres, or like 1.5 acres of land, a very big land. If the cost to rebuild it is $3 million and the insurance company only covers $2 million, he either has to find that $1 million or he settle for a smaller house that can be built under $2 million. But if he settles for a smaller house, he's not maximizing the potential of that land. All right. So that's a dilemma. That's why a lot of builders and a lot of people, what they might end up doing is just sell the land and take the insurance money and say, hey, I'm out of here. Whoever wants to do it, do it. Go ahead. Next question. That's actually a very good topic. I'll go into a little bit of it today. So the question is, what is my take on building houses, especially speeding up the process with the prefabricated materials and process? A lot of you guys might know that the construction industry, especially in America, is very slow. It's very prone to changes. Right, so people don't like to change. You see the houses here are built with stick and mortar. You have wood frames, right? You have stuccos, you have vinyl windows and tile roofing. Sometimes you got shingles roofings. There's not a lot of construction process innovation in the past 10 years, 20 years. Houses that are built 50 years ago is the same process, and the reason for that is it works. And this kind of goes into bigger national, international policy. The products, the materials in America construction is not as expensive compared to the rest of the world. It's a much bigger topic, but just a little bit. So why use new product and save that a little bit amount of money when you have to invent the entire process, educate new trades, educate subcontractors to do it, and risk yourself for product defects, different build time. That if you can just build what is works with the existing technology for the cost that you can absorb, right? As the density goes higher, as the building cost goes higher, the building method and procedure will change. Look at China. They're so used to building skyscrapers. Their process is more advanced than America. Europe is more advanced in building high density residentials or commercials. However, Americans don't have to do that. Most of the Americas is suburb or outside the urban area, right? You have single families and you have townhomes, and those are built by the traditional ways of framing, stuccos, and roofing. So I don't know if that answers the question more or less. Yeah, that's right. So the prefabricated way is sometimes use less time, right? And also time is the essence because in America, labor is so expensive. Um, but that kind of also goes to the people's perception of a prefabricated house. There was talk and also example of the 3D printed house. And most people don't understand that product and it's not tested. They would rather buy a traditional houses because they know what that is, right? So American people are very they reluctant to accept new ideas. Sorry, we'll have one question there first. What's my take about government talking about 2.0? Rebuilding Los Angeles 2.0. Okay, so that's a very good question. So the question is, what's my take on governor proposing building Los Angeles 2.0 with more fire resistances, higher building standards, and what be the effect on the cost and all that? Remember earlier we talked about California has a building policy crisis, right? I think the 2.0, if indeed we focus more on the fire resistances or the green energy thing, it will absolutely increase the cost of a standard house. So give me one second. So common sense, if I have to build my walls to a 2-hour fire rating compared to the existing 1-hour fire rating, I'm going to use more expensive materials. There might be different building methods, right? If that is required across the board, your entry-level home is going to be more expensive. This might not be that significant increase for very high-priced custom homes. If your house is $5 million, you're probably already building to a very high standard. But if your house is entry level $500,000, that might increase your cost by $20,000, $50,000. That's 10% of your current cost. And that's going to further reduce the affordability of this. So to answer that question, I don't think requiring each house to be more fire resist is the right approach, but rather as a community and an infrastructure to how to prevent a systematic massive fire is probably a better solution. Same way, we have houses that are $5 million that burn just as quick as a $500,000 houses. If the whole area burns for days, there's absolutely nothing is going to stand that fire. So hopefully, being in California, I'm a promoter to have more sustainability and everything, but I think a lot of time that decision needs to be on the homeowner, whether they can use natural gas or they have to electrify everything, right? Whether they want to use solar or they choose not to use solar. I think not everybody is working with unlimited pocket of funds. It has to work and it has to cater to the basic needs of the people first. Do I know anything about the tiny houses that's manufactured by Elon Musk? Every year, there is a conference called KBIS and BIS in Vegas. Actually, it's next week. What that is the America's largest trade show for building materials and building construction related trades. Hosted in Vegas. So we got $50,000 more, $100,000, 100,000 people that participates. And in the past couple of years, the tiny houses you see more and more of those companies having stands, having booths promoting that product. The question for that is also in the policy, not in the construction. Most of the cities do not have the standard or do not have a standard procedure to evaluate whether those products are safe or according to the city's construction code. So theoretically, you can go on eBay or whatnot. You can buy one for $30,000. You can put it in your backyard. That's usually fine. But if you wanted to do that and rent it out or sell it to somebody, then all of a sudden you have a safety issue, right? You have access issue, ADA issue, handicap issue. So those needs to be across the board approved on a state level and then trickle down into the city's level for the city to accept that product. If you're trying to go the other way, most of the city do not have the expertise or the manpower to evaluate that kind of product by itself and approve it. So you will kind of go be, you know what, I don't know if I can approve you. So the answer is no, I'm not going to let you do it. Hope that makes sense.
Okay, so thank you, Vincent. Looks like this is a very great session, right? Yes, give Vincent a big round of applause. And on behalf of West and Gabriel Realtors, we'd like to present you this certificate. Thank you.